I don't remember why I decided that my wife was cheating on me. There's a saying that you can look at different pieces of a puzzle and have no idea what it will look like until you put all the pieces together. It was easy to look at the individual pieces and draw the wrong conclusions. For example, our sex life had certainly cooled off, but after 7 years together, that was perfectly normal. My wife, Amy, worked as a nurse in the emergency room, so she often came home late because of accidents or because one of the other nurses called her in to work. On top of that, she worked different shifts, so there were days when we hardly saw each other. During the pandemic, our life turned into a nightmare. There were a lot of little annoyances, and I felt silly talking about them out loud or posting them here. The anxiety about it was eating me up inside. I was losing weight that I shouldn't have been losing. My hair was thinning, and I was only in my early 20s. I started discussing my symptoms with my doctor, and his first question was whether I had been under a lot of stress lately. I said no. He wrote me a prescription for Xanax, which I bought. After several weeks of torment, I decided I had to do something. I believed I could talk to Amy, but she could easily lie to me and then possibly go into hiding or become even more cautious. After some research online, I purchased several cameras, which I hid around the house. I bought a tracking device, which I placed discreetly in her bag. I also bought several voice recorders, one for her bag and another for her car. There was also an app that I could install on her phone. When I went to hide the voice recorder in her bag, I found a second phone. Amy worked 4 10-hour days and then had 3 days off. That week, she had Thursday through Sunday off. I believed I was just being paranoid that Amy was cheating on me. But things got even worse when I heard her tell someone to come over on Thursday morning and sleep with her. Amy was going to be home late that night, which gave me time to make sure all the cameras were set up. I also booked 3 days at a hotel, and before my wife got home on Wednesday, I had already checked in and left a bunch of clothes there. On Friday morning, I had a meeting with my divorce lawyer. After all that, I took a few Xanax pills and was already unconscious when my dear wife came home and tried to have sex. Before leaving for work on Thursday morning, I took her second phone from her bag. A friend told me about a store called You Break It, I Fix It, where they could clone her phone for a fee. Amy surprised me with a call early in the morning and said she couldn't find her phone. I replied that she had just called me from it. Amy said she had another phone from the hospital in case of an emergency. Thursday at work was a nightmare. The motion sensor on the cameras kept alerting my phone, which wasn't unusual since Amy was home and probably doing chores. But I didn't want to look while I was at work. Amy wasn't home when I got there. I put my laptop on the kitchen table and started looking through the video files that the cameras had uploaded to the cloud. Most of them were short, only a couple of minutes long, showing Amy walking past the room. I clicked on one of the files from the bedroom. There was a guy with his video camera. He was naked. The sound was on, so I didn't notice that Amy had come in and was standing in front of me at the table. "Are you watching porn in the kitchen, Jack? That's really low." With those words, I vomited the contents of my stomach onto the kitchen table, almost hitting the laptop. Amy started screaming, "What the hell is that, Jack?" There were some other words I didn't hear because after I threw up, I realized I was about to soil my pants, so I grabbed my phone and ran to the bathroom. I barely had time to pull down my pants. It was the most disgusting smell I had ever smelled. Amy was banging on the door, which I luckily managed to lock. She wanted to know if I was okay and if I could light a candle. I believed that Amy could see what I was watching and delete the video, so I started sending the video from the camera in my bedroom to people on my contact list. I had tears in my eyes, so I didn't know who exactly I was sending it to. I made sure her parents, brother, sister, and all her co-workers got copies. I felt like I had drunk the stuff they give you before a colonoscopy because I had literally emptied my bowels. The smell was so bad that I threw up in the sink from time to time. Amy knocked on the bathroom door again. "Jack, I saw what you were watching, and I'm really sorry. Please come out. Let's talk." Sitting there, I started checking the other cameras. In one scene, Amy was being pleasured by 2 men. I sent the video from the kitchen to all of her friends on my contact list. I wanted to post them on Facebook, but decided they wouldn't pass her censorship. I started looking for something with a PG rating. Amy was standing at the door again. "Jack, please stop. You sent the video to my parents, Jack. It's breaking their hearts." A few minutes later, "Jack, not the ones from the kitchen table. Please stop, Jack. You're ruining my life in front of my family and friends. If I have any family and friends left, I'm begging you, Jack. I know you hate me right now, and I don't blame you, but please stop." Through the crack at the bottom of the bathroom door, I could see Amy sitting there repeating, "Please stop, Jack," sobbing. "My father will never forget this, Jack." "Me neither, Amy." Maybe I was empty, so I flushed the toilet again, washed my vomit out of the sink, and turned on the shower. "Amy, I'm going to take a shower, and then I'm going to a hotel. I really don't want to see you or talk to you today, so please leave when I leave." "Okay, Jack, I understand. I need to talk to my parents, so I won't be here when you leave. Do you want me to pack your things or make you something to eat before you go? You need to drink. You have to take care of your dehydration, Jack." "My things are already at the hotel, Amy. I'll drink when I get there." "No alcohol, Jack. It will only make the dehydration worse. I'll leave some clean clothes at your door." Had she suddenly become a loving, caring wife, or was this just her nursing nature coming out? Amy really did leave clothes for me, and I quickly headed to the hotel. When I arrived, my phone was ringing off the hook, so I turned it off. I figured a bunch of people wanted to know how I could share that, and how I could do that to Amy. I was exhausted, took a bunch of Xanax, and passed out. In the morning, my phone rang. There were missed calls and messages from Amy asking if I had made it to the hotel. I replied that everything was fine, realized I was hungry, and went to a diner. I had an hour before meeting with the lawyer. Over breakfast, I started looking through my missed calls, messages, and emails. As expected, most of Amy's friends wanted to know how I could have done this to her. I wanted to ask them what she had done to me. There were several messages from her brother with increasingly threatening threats and messages from her parents asking me to stop. There was a message from a number I didn't recognize. "I'm glad you found out, Jack. But I couldn't think of a more painful way than to catch you red-handed. I couldn't not tell you. These two gentlemen, and I use that word loosely, are doctors in the emergency room. One of them is called Doctor Dre, like the character in the TV series Grey's Anatomy. I sent the videos you sent me to their wives, some of their colleagues, and their superiors. I also sent them to the entire hospital management, including the CEO and the Human Resources Department of the hospital's holding company. Dr. Dreamy and another jerk have already been warned to keep their toys in their pants. For obvious reasons, I have to hide my identity, so I'm using a disposable phone. But if you need anything, don't hesitate to contact me." I replied to this person, thanked him, and asked who he was. There was no response. It was nice to know that someone was on my side. I still needed to call my parents, brother, and sister. They were all big fans of Amy, and I wondered how direct I needed to be to get them to understand my position. They may have been big fans of Amy, but I had to protect them from harassment from her or Dr. Drim. The lawyer presented no surprises. Although I had evidence of her infidelity, it would not help me. Maybe if I hadn't sent them all over the world, I could have used them as a bargaining chip if necessary. Amy and I had only been married for 7 years, so we didn't have much in the way of assets. We lived in a rented apartment and our cars were leased. We discussed the possibility of suing the hospital, and he agreed to take the case and prepare the paperwork. As for the divorce, he suggested I talk to Amy, and if we could come to an agreement, he could make the divorce quick and painless. He needed a list of our assets, including retirement savings and stocks. The largest account was a savings account where we had been putting money aside for a house. He didn't want to watch the video, but he took the flash drive, and as I was leaving, he said, "Divorce is a billion-dollar industry. Lawyers, judges, private investigators, spy equipment, plus the cost of counseling for children and spouses. One would think that by now, we as a species would have evolved to the point where we could control our sexual urges. When I left the lawyer's office, another message came from Amy. I'm staying with my parents for a few days, even though they don't want me there. I guess you're not interested in the apartment, so you can pick up your clothes and anything else you want during that time. I assume you don't want the furniture, so I'm offering you $5,000 for your share. I have a meeting with a lawyer on Monday, and I'll send you his contact information if he agrees to take my case. Later, a second message arrived. Jack, I'm sorry I caused you so much pain. My parents have asked me 1,000 times why I did this to you, and I don't know what to tell them. While Amy was away, I took all my things out and put them in a storage container. I told Amy that if she wanted to keep the flat-screen TV she had just bought, she would have to pay me $1,500. She agreed. We split the bills, the lawyers filed the papers, and in 6 months, everything should have been settled. The last time I saw Amy was when I threw up on her kitchen table. A week after that day, my anonymous friend told me that Amy and both doctors had been fired along with the emergency room management, but they would likely be hired elsewhere. Both of Amy's doctor friends were in divorce court, and their wives had hired a famous lawyer. And my anonymous friend told me that Amy had moved back into her apartment. Her parents couldn't wait for her to leave their house, and it would be a long time before she was invited to Christmas dinner. I asked, how can she afford an apartment if she's not working? From what I heard, her parents said they'd rather pay her rent than look at her every day. My anonymous friend replied. Even with Xanax, I hardly slept at night. At first, fragments of the video flashed through my dreams, even though I had hardly watched it that day and never watched it again. By the end of the week, I was haunted by Amy's pitiful sobs behind the bathroom door, begging me to stop. They say you can't hear anything in your sleep, but every night I hear Amy's voice saying, "Please stop, Jack." A couple of weeks later, my anonymous source told me that Amy had managed to get her job back at the hospital, but now she was working in the cancer ward. Amy hired a lawyer who claimed that the hospital had been warned in advance that both doctors were sex offenders and that Amy was the victim of the hospital's negligence in not firing them. My lawyer was able to get a good settlement from the hospital, and that money, along with the money from our account, was enough for me to make a down payment on a small house. It was nothing special. Nothing like the house Amy and I had dreamed of, and I furnished it with cheap furniture. I don't know how Amy found out where I lived, but sometimes I would come home from work and find something I had forgotten, or a stack of letters on my doorstep. On my birthday, there was a gift waiting for me. Nothing expensive, just a bottle of good scotch and a warm hat. There was no note, and I decided it was from Amy. Miss Anonymous also wished me a happy birthday, and that's what I started calling her, even though I didn't know if she was a woman or a man. Miss Anonymous said that the video of Amy and the two doctors had spread throughout the hospital. Several other nurses eventually confessed to their husbands and filed for divorce. Although Dr. Drimmer worked at a different hospital, one evening after work he was beaten and had both his hands cut off. His hands were never found, but apparently he was told to stay away from other people's wives. Who's going to wipe his ass now? A few days ago, I was questioned by the police, but they didn't tell me any details, only where I was that night. Fortunately, after Amy started leaving things at my door, I installed a camera at the entrance that also showed my car. The police took this as proof that I hadn't left the house. It doesn't seem like they're trying very hard to find Dr. Mehta's attacker. Amy left me a Christmas present, and since I now had a camera on my doorbell, I knew it was her. And Miss Anonymous wished me a Merry Christmas, too. I spent the day with my family, but didn't stay long. That evening, Miss Anonymous asked me if I was upset that I had spent Christmas with my family, and Amy hadn't. Perhaps because she had no one to spend the day with, she was working 2 shifts. "No, I'm not upset," I replied in a text message. "She made this mess herself, and my Christmas wasn't a walk in the park either." On the first anniversary of the day I threw up on the table, I received a blank card from Amy with the simple words, "I'm sorry." A year after the divorce, I found my copy of the flash drive with the videos. I had long since deleted them from my computer and hardly ever watched them except for the ones I mentioned earlier. I threw the flash drive in the trash. It was time to close the chapter on Amy in my life. The anonymous woman continued to keep me updated on Amy's life, even though I didn't care. My family and friends tried to set me up with different women, but I wasn't interested in any of them. I begged my brother and sister-in-law to stop inviting these women to barbecues because I could see how my indifference hurt them. A month after I received the card from Amy, as I called her, Miss Anonymous changed her opinion of Amy. The source said, "I often despised Amy for how she deceived you. No man deserves that, especially you. If you asked Amy who she despises the most, I'm sure she would say me. Now I see a broken woman who comes to work and hardly ever smiles, except to her patients. I know she never participates in our bachelorette parties or any social events at the hospital. Men have stopped asking her out because her no thank you has become cruel. She doesn't even go out for lunch or coffee with the other nurses. She still lives alone in your old apartment and doesn't go anywhere." I asked her, still believing that the anonymous author of the text was a woman, why she continued to keep me informed about Amy, since it was all in the past for me. The anonymous lady replied, "At first, I was ashamed that I hadn't said anything before. Maybe if I had, it would have ended sooner, without causing so much damage, without the threesome at your house. From what I hear, they slept together for the first time at your place, and it was their first threesome, even though Dr. Dreamy had been pressuring them for a long time." "Okay," I said. "I appreciate the information you shared with me earlier. But why tell me now that she's a broken woman?" "Jack, I know you haven't been on a date since you broke up with Amy, and I'm willing to bet that women don't even try to get your attention. I'd bet you rarely smile. At least Amy has patience she can smile at. I wonder who's more broken, you or Amy?" I typed a dozen responses, including, "Go to hell," and deleted them. An anonymous woman wrote first, "There was a time when I admired how you and Amy were in sync, moving around the room as one. Now you're in sync again. No smiles, no social life. You both go to work, come home, and sleep. Do you get excited when you go to the grocery store?" "Please stop," I replied. I knew my life was a mess and there was no way out except a bullet. I didn't need anyone to remind me of that. After I hit send, I remembered how Amy had begged me to stop at the bathroom door. After a year of taking Xanax, my doctor refused to renew my prescription. It wasn't helping anyway. Nothing could drown out Amy's cries. "Please stop." So I started running with no plan and no route. After work, I would change clothes and run until I couldn't run anymore. I used GPS on my phone to find out where I was, and most of the time I had to call an Uber to get home. It helped me sleep. An anonymous woman reminded me that I couldn't run away from my problems, and Amy was just taking extra shifts to run away from hers. "Besides," she said, "you were the first one to cheat on Amy." "That's a fucking lie," I replied. "I just found out, Jack. Give me a day or two to find the video Amy sent. Do you believe Amy just decided to accept Dr. Dream's advances?" I was so angry I couldn't respond. I would never cheat on Amy. 2 days later, she sent me the video. A guy who looked like me was having sex with a woman. I didn't recognize the woman or the room. The video was blurry, but at times I thought the guy looked like me. Same build, same hair color, even his voice sounded like mine. What the hell, I thought. I knew it wasn't me, but it wasn't hard to see why other people might think it was. I went for a run, and when my Uber arrived, I started watching the video again. The last few frames showed a guy pleasuring a woman. I didn't want to see it, even if it was my butt. But it wasn't my butt because I have a scar from childhood trauma. The scar was small, but it took a long time to heal. I took a screenshot of the video where the guy's butt was clearly visible, took a picture of my left cheek, and sent everything to Miss Anonymous. "That's not me," I wrote. She didn't respond, so I wrote, "Regardless of whether it was me or not, Amy should have talked to me before having a threesome with Dr. Dream and doing all those terrible things with him. How long had she been sleeping with him before I caught them?" "1 month," she replied. I didn't know what to do. I believed I was even angrier than I was on the day I threw up on the table. My armor was cracked. And life went on as before. I worked, ran, ate, slept, and repeated. There was no news from the anonymous lady. Amy left a card on our 2nd anniversary, and as usual, the day after work, I ran aimlessly. When I got tired, I looked up and found myself standing in front of Amy's apartment. If I ran the most direct route, it would be a good 20 miles. I sat down on the steps, my body refusing to listen to me, and just sat there. My water bottle was empty, and my legs were cramping. Then Amy's car pulled up. I don't know if she noticed me. She just sat there with her head leaning against the steering wheel. When she looked up, she saw me and wiped her eyes. Amy sat down on the steps next to me. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Why are you here, Jack? Are you okay? Are you hurt?" I was running and didn't look where I was going. I ended up here and ran out of gas. Usually when that happens, I call an Uber to take me home. "Are you okay, Amy? Why were you crying?" "It doesn't matter, Jack. Do you want to come in?" "I don't think I can, Amy. I just need to sit for a while." "Can I sit with you?" I muttered, "Yes," and noticed that Amy had sat down next to me. We were even touching each other. And then she took my hand in hers. She was crying again, not sobbing, just tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why were you crying when you pulled up, not knowing I was here?" "It doesn't matter, Jack. Do you want something to drink?" "I want you to tell me why you were crying when you pulled up." Amy buried her face in my shoulder and squeezed my hand tighter. "This is the worst part of my day, Jack. Coming here, to what used to be our home, knowing you're not here, that you'll never be here again, and wondering why I get up every morning. They told me it wasn't you in the video, and I know I ruined everything, ruined it so badly that nothing can ever be fixed. I cry every time I come home, cry and wonder why I didn't just end this nightmare. And then I see you in my dreams, sitting here just like this, and it gives me enough hope to try again, just one more day." Then she really started crying, even harder than when she was sitting at the bathroom door, and those sobs haunted me for 2 more years. I held her hand and sat there, not knowing what to say. The words, "Why not just end this nightmare?" echoed in my head. How many times had I believed the same thing as I tried to fall asleep and heard over and over again, "Please stop, Jack." I hugged her and said, "We're both broken, Amy." That made her cry even harder. On the first night, fireflies appeared, reminding us how long we had been sitting there. Amy stopped crying, but I didn't want to let her go. I believed she didn't want to either, but I really didn't know what to think. Amy was still hiding her face in my shoulder when she said, "I'll take you home, Jack, but I need to use the bathroom first." She was already running into the house when I remembered I wanted a drink and asked for a bottle of water. Amy handed me the bottle and we got into her car. Neither of us spoke as she drove to my house. When she pulled into the driveway, we just sat there. I didn't make any move to get out of the car, and except for parking, Amy didn't move either. The ball was on my side of the field. I had to make a decision, and 1,000 options were running through my head. "Want to come in, Amy? See the house?" "Okay, Jack." She turned off the engine, and we got out of the car. I started mumbling, "It's not very big, not like the one we were saving up for. But it's small and easy to clean. I don't have any guests coming over. I hope I didn't leave any dirty laundry out. And I haven't had time to furnish it yet. Just some cheap stuff." I showed Amy the living room and kitchen, 2 completely empty bedrooms, and then the master bedroom. "Thank God there's no dirty laundry lying around," I said. "Jack, why is our wedding photo on your nightstand?" I knew why, but I couldn't say it without crying like a baby. Instead, I hugged her and said, It gives me enough hope to start all over again, at least for one more day, Amy. We spent another eternity hugging each other.